there's something to be said about a ship that is almost perfect, regardless of who made it, how much it costs, whether that be real money or imaginary space credits. Ticking so many boxes in quick succession can often be a ship's undoing, rather than its benefit. Citizens, my name's Beard of Oz, and today I'm talking about the RSI Hermes, a reimagining of a ship that tripped over its own hype out of the gate and runs the risk of doing the same. I'll do the obligatory going over its stats, what it's for and how it performs, but also touch on the growing flaw that CRG themselves have cultivated. Alright, let's dive in. As I've mentioned, and you might already know, the RSI Hermes is the chassis repurpose of the RSI Apollo, a long-awaited and overhyped medical gameplay linchpin. The advertisements for this ship have been in-game, glowing at you in the walkways of Area 18 and other similar locations for quite some time. It promised a home and hearth for those inclined towards medical gameplay, yet another victim of overpromise and underdeliver, wrapped up in an excuse of priorities. With underwhelming backer sentiment upon the Apollo's arrival, someone at CRG clearly thought such an abominable use of expansive ship interior could be utilised for another ship. Sail. And so from the marker rose the Hermes, the hollowed out cargo hauler with a hide thicker than a Snickers and a doorway tighter than Chris's fist around progress. But what's it got under the hood? Out of the box, the RSI Hermes is chonk. It comes with 2 size 2 power supplies, 2 size 2 coolers, a whopping 4 size 2 shields and a size 2 quantum drive. Not to be passed over though is the Hermes' hefty fuel tank with, at the time of writing, 4.5 million in quantum and 90 million in hydrogen, and maybe just maybe one day that hydrogen will actually make a difference. Now that armor and hull is a nominal factor, I should mention that the Hermes is thick, and I mean thick. Again, subject to change like most numbers in Star Citizen, it has at the time of writing 124,000 in accumulated ship HP. To give you an idea of comparison, the Asgard has 77,000. In terms of armaments, it's far from lacking, settling in slightly below its much older brother, the Constellation, with 4 size 4 hardpoints, all slaved to the pilot, with 2 of which being turret mounted on the roof, and capable of being controlled independently by a co-pilot should a defensive posture need to be taken. It also possesses 16 size 2 missiles, all in couched launchers, a growing trend with newer ships it seems. The cargo hold is where these numbers start to get really interesting in my opinion, with an official 288 SCU grid-mounted cargo space. As with most cargo space, an obsessive citizen can finagle in a lot more, but I must say, based purely on the grid-mounted cargo, this has to be one of the better internal grids to come from CRG in some time. 2 SU high with ceiling space for movement, walkways all the way around the 2 halves of the total grid, enough space for 8 32 SU crates, and a rail-run tractor beam that is controlled from the cargo hold itself. Any critiques I have of the cargo hold are minor and pedantic. My real criticism is for the cargo hold's singular and narrow throughway for cargo itself, a flaw that is intentional and something I'll get to later. Looking from the outside, you can see the unmistakable RSI design language, something that in the more recent vessels from the brand I have to say I prefer. If the Constellation is reworked to look more like this, I wouldn't complain. The cockpit is glassy and strutted, a popular choice when it comes to RSI vessels, and a great one internally for VR and head-tracking citizens. I must say, the landing struts are not my favourite, with their size-to-body ratio reminding me of a child's rendition of an elephant in clay, and in landing, there seems to have a similarly unbalanced result. Making our way underneath the cockpit, we have an elevator much like the Constellation series and the more direct Apollo. The other entrance to the ship being at the rear with the overused RSI ramp asset. The most common complaint I hear about this ship is the width of the doorway, preventing players from driving their mobile respawn bed Nursa in. And while I'd love a little more room for bringing cargo crates in, I'm personally okay with this vehicle-related restriction. A hot take, I know. I'll get into that later. The ramp leads into our cargo hold, which I've touched on already. Near the entryway, we'll find the 4 shield generators housed behind clean sliding panels, as well as a weapon rack and completely useless suit locker on each side. The weapon lockers unfortunately will not house oversized special weapons. My poor sweet boom tube, they've snubbed you. Within the cargo hold are 2 fire extinguishers, one at the ramp exit and another at the door leading to the cockpit. Within this airlock, the remaining components are housed behind sliding panels, as well as the engineering interface on the port side. Clearing the airlock leads to the combination cockpit living space, furnished with 2 bunks, a table booth, food dispenser, and Spartan hygiene closet. In the center is the elevator mentioned before, and then last but not least, the pilot and co-pilot's chairs. Beyond the obvious cargo hauling intent for this ship, the Hermes has enough housed within to not only be a daily driver, but something of a base station also, with enough room for an ample amount of cargo, whether for trade or the gradual additions of crafting as more and more recipes are hopefully added. A small fabricator could easily be operated out of the Hermes to fuel ground expeditions, but that's all a bit hopium fueled at the moment, so let's ground ourselves for now. Hover bikes and smaller ground vehicles such as the Steve can be transported should such a thing interest you, not to mention the ATLS Geo for ground mining. But it doesn't fit the Nursa, some of you have cried for the 3rd time. And that's true. It doesn't. And we might as well get into it. It shouldn't. I would love for this ship to fit larger vehicles, and it would make sense to fit larger vehicles, but CIG made a rod for their back with the Nursa. It's an abomination and a lazy cheat code for players that want to meat grinder themselves against ground combat. And that's not entirely the player's fault for leaning on that crutch so heavily. CIG gave us that heroin, and the weakest amongst us readily pumped it into their veins, and by doing so, created a flock of deranged seagulls that squawk the word Nursa ad nauseum. It is yet another shortcut made by CIG. A flagrant cheapening of gameplay in the name of sales, but I don't want every ship to have a respawn point, and I'm glad the Nursa doesn't fit. But don't worry, I'm sure we'll be getting Warbond-only grid-mounted respawn beds the next time Chris's yacht insurance bill comes in the mail. And so it was easier, and in my opinion, the better choice, to limit what can go inside the Hermes by literally bottlenecking the entryway so that a Nursa doesn't fit, and players might still have a reason to use the Apollo. They probably won't, they'll just use the Corsair or something. End of rant. Combatively speaking, the Hermes is no slouch. With the state of armor and engineering, the hefty HP pool allows the moniker a blockade runner some credence, though I would argue the speed cap somewhat dampens that. With 4 size 4 ballistic Gatlings, the Hermes can put a hurting on anything with a slower turning circle, and should missiles become viable again, one day, the clutch of 16 size 2s could definitely give pause to smaller, nimbler vessels with some lucky rattlers. Moving cargo within it is certainly made better than the other ships with the dual position tractor, though in my opinion still feels a little too clunky at times. The cargo capacity, however, is in a nice spot, being large enough to see reasonable profits whether engaging in the desperately outdated commodity trading loop or the overpaid risk-free hauling contracts, but also not so large an amount of cargo you'd start wishing you'd never become a cargo hauler in the first place. So is it a ship worth having? Maybe. I enjoy it, but I don't think it's a ship I'd keep forever. It has a lot of the stats on paper that qualify it as a larger daily driver, but I think being so close to perfect but just falling short with the rear axis width is what sticks out most to me. Whether you agree with me that a Nursa shouldn't fit but still find the limitations of other ground vehicles having access, or if you vehemently disagree and want it to be a mobile respawn base, the fact remains the same that the door is an issue. At least from making it a perfect ship. And I think this is a trend with CIG, whether intentionally or not, of making a ship almost perfect but having some critical flaw. Like the ship design team is far too in love with the underdog ship popularized in science fiction media, where a ship is so heavily overpowered in one area but flawed in another area, much like the leather jacket wearing captain that pilots it. It's frustrating. There are better ways to make your player base want to engage with other ships. All in all, I like the RSI Hermes, but I don't love it. And that might be more a result of my preference for ships with more character, which I have to say, the more I engage with RSI ships, the more I realize they are the white bread of the bunch, palatable but ultimately boring. It is durable, I'll say that much, and as it stands, can dish out a fair amount of punishment and carry cargo also, but damn if I can't wait to just melt this ship and move on with my life. And so there you have it, the RSI Hermes. Have you had a crack at this ship yet, or is it just not enough to tempt your wallet? Let me know in the comments section below. If you haven't already, hit that like button. It really helps the video and the channel as a whole. If you aren't already subscribed, consider doing that too. I stream on YouTube as well as Twitch, so feel free to stop by and say, hey. Stay safe in the verse, citizens, and I'll catch you all next time.